What happened when an undercover CEO stepped into his own failing firehouse? Logan Hayes built his fire stations on integrity, bravery, and community service. But when troubling reports surfaced, delayed responses, mistreated rookies, and a toxic leadership, he knew something was wrong. Instead of relying on second-hand reports, he went undercover as a rookie firefighter to see the truth for himself. What he discovered was worse than he imagined: corrupt leadership, neglected equipment, and a station that had lost its purpose. Could he take back control before lives were lost? Stay tuned to find out how true leadership is about action, not titles. Logan Hayes sat in his truck outside Station 17, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. The firehouse that once stood as a pillar of protection for the community had fallen into disrepair, not physically, but in its heart and spirit. Complaints had been piling up: delayed response times, disrespectful firefighters, a lack of urgency when lives were on the line. Logan had spent the last 15 years building his career with the fire department, working his way up from a rookie firefighter to fire chief, ensuring that every station under his leadership upheld the values of service, integrity, and community. But Station 17 had become an embarrassment, a place where firefighters seemed more interested in their own convenience than protecting civilians. When Logan confronted Captain Darren Reed about the complaints, he was met with deflection and excuses. "People complain about everything," Darren had scoffed. "We do our jobs. If they don't like how we run things, they can call someone else." But Logan knew that wasn't the right answer. A failing fire station wasn't just a PR problem. It was a matter of life and death. Instead of issuing orders from behind a desk, Logan made a decision: he would go undercover as a rookie firefighter. If he wanted to see the truth, he had to experience it himself. Stripping away his title, his authority, and his recognition, he would step into Station 17 not as Fire Chief Hayes, but as Logan Scott, a fresh transfer looking to prove himself. He adjusted his worn-out uniform, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. Whatever was happening behind these doors, he was about to find out firsthand. As Logan stepped through the heavy doors of Station 17, the air inside felt thick with indifference. The familiar scent of smoke, sweat, and old coffee lingered, but the energy was different, stale, unwelcoming. At any other station, a new recruit would be greeted with a mix of friendly ribbing and guidance, but here, no one even looked up from what they were doing. The TV in the common area blared, a couple of firefighters lounged in recliners, and a game of poker was happening at the kitchen table. Logan stood by the door for a few moments before someone finally acknowledged him. A firefighter in a stained uniform, boots propped up on the table, lazily glanced at him. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, chewing on a toothpick. "Logan Scott. Transfer from Station 22, Logan said, keeping his voice even. A tall, broad-shouldered man stood up and sauntered over. Captain Darren Reed. His smirk was cocky, dismissive. "A transfer, huh? They must not have liked you much if they dumped you here." A few guys snickered. Logan forced a small smile, just looking for a fresh start. Darren scoffed. "Yeah? Well, don't expect us to hold your hand. We're not babysitters." He gestured toward the bunk room. "Pick an empty bed. Try not to screw up too bad." As Logan moved toward the lockers, he could feel the eyes on him, assessing, waiting for him to fail. No welcome, no introductions, no sense of camaraderie. Just a station full of firefighters who didn't seem to care. He noticed the gear hanging by the trucks, some of it poorly maintained, helmets left on the ground, boots scattered. It was a far cry from the disciplined, sharp stations he was used to. This wasn't just a struggling firehouse. It was a firehouse that had given up. Logan clenched his jaw. If this was how they treated a new recruit, how did they treat the people they were supposed to protect? One thing was clear. He had a lot of work to do. It didn't take long for Logan to see just how deep the problems at Station 17 ran. The first emergency call of his shift came in: a house fire reported on Oak Ridge Street. Adrenaline surged through him as he rushed to the fire truck, ready to suit up. But instead of the urgency he was used to, Logan watched in disbelief as his new team moved at a sluggish pace. "Relax, rookie," Lieutenant Eric Marsh muttered, stretching as he lazily strapped on his gear. "By the time we get there, the fire will probably be out anyway." Logan's stomach twisted. Every second counted in a fire. Delays meant lives lost, homes destroyed. Yet as the crew finally loaded into the truck, Captain Darren Reed didn't even bother to come along. "Call me if it's serious," he yawned from his recliner. The lack of urgency wasn't just frustrating, it was dangerous. When they finally arrived, Logan saw what should have been a manageable kitchen fire had spread to half the house. A frantic mother stood outside, smoke-streaked, screaming about her son still inside. Logan's training kicked in immediately, but as he started toward the burning home, Marsh grabbed his arm. "We don't rush into unstable structures unless we're sure it's safe," he said, his tone indifferent. Logan's blood boiled. Safe? The fire was spreading fast. Waiting wasn't an option. Without hesitation, he broke from Marsh's grip and charged inside. The heat was overwhelming, but he pushed forward, finding a terrified 6-year-old boy huddled in a closet. Wrapping the child in his jacket, Logan rushed back outside, barely making it before the ceiling caved in. As soon as they returned to the station, Logan braced himself for praise or even a reprimand for ignoring orders. Instead, Marsh simply rolled his eyes. "You pull stunts like that, you won't last long here." And that's when it hit him. This wasn't laziness, it was a culture of neglect. These men weren't just careless, they had become so indifferent that saving lives had become a secondary priority. Even worse, Logan overheard whispers of special calls, wealthy business owners making quiet donations in exchange for faster emergency response times, while lower-income neighborhoods were ignored. This wasn't just a failing firehouse. This was corruption, and Logan had seen enough. The breaking point came late one night when a desperate call crackled through the station's radio, a family trapped in their burning home on Ridgeway Avenue, one of the poorer neighborhoods in town. Logan, still new but already disillusioned, jumped from his bunk and rushed to suit up, expecting the rest of the team to do the same. But instead, he found Lieutenant Marsh and Captain Reed lounging in the break room, sipping coffee as if nothing urgent was happening. "What are you waiting for?" Logan demanded, his voice tight with frustration. Marsh didn't even glance up. "It's Ridgeway. Those old houses are fire hazards waiting to happen," he said with a shrug. "Besides, the city cut funding for that district, so why should we bust our asses?" Logan's blood ran cold. "There are kids in that house," he argued. Reed leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "We'll get there when we get there," he said lazily. "We got a donation from the city councilman's office earlier today. His district gets priority." Logan felt sick. They were prioritizing neighborhoods based on money, deciding who lived or died based on donations. And worse, no one else in the room looked surprised. The other firefighters just avoided eye contact, shifting uncomfortably, but saying nothing. Fury surged through him. Without another word, Logan grabbed his helmet and bolted for the truck. If no one else was going, he'd go alone. But just as he reached for the door, Marsh blocked his way. "You're not taking that truck anywhere," he warned. "You work for us, rookie. You follow our rules." Logan's jaw clenched. He could hear the dispatcher calling again, the panic in her voice clear. The fire was spreading fast, and there were children trapped inside. Every second wasted was a death sentence. "We're firefighters," Logan hissed. "We save lives." Marsh's expression hardened. "Not tonight, we don't." The words hit Logan like a gut punch. He had spent his entire career believing in the duty to protect, but here he was, standing in a fire station that chose who was worth saving. Then, the worst sound imaginable filled the room. A new call came over the radio. The house had collapsed. The dispatcher's voice shook as she confirmed the unthinkable. 2 children were unaccounted for. Logan stood frozen, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. This was preventable. This was the moment he realized he wasn't just working in a failing firehouse. He was working in a firehouse that had lost its soul, and he wasn't going to let it stay that way. The next morning, Logan walked into the firehouse with a different kind of determination burning inside him. He had spent the entire night awake, replaying the dispatcher's final words over and over. 2 children gone, not because they couldn't be saved, but because the very people sworn to protect them chose not to act. And now, Logan was done playing along. He strode straight into the captain's office where Reed and Marsh were laughing over coffee, oblivious to the weight of their failure. Logan didn't knock. He slammed a thick folder onto the desk, making both men jump. "What the hell is this?" Reed snapped, reaching for the file. "Evidence," Logan said coldly, "of every single call this station has ignored. Every house fire we didn't respond to in the poor districts. Every medical emergency that was too far or not a priority. Every single family we abandoned." Marsh scoffed, flipping through the pages. "You've been keeping records?" "No," Logan said, stepping closer. "The city has..." Because last night after the tragedy on Ridgeway Avenue, Logan had called an investigative journalist. He had laid everything bare. The corruption, the bribery-fueled response system, the way Reed and Marsh prioritized donors over lives. The journalist had dug into city records, uncovering the shocking pattern of delayed responses and ignored calls in lower-income neighborhoods. And now, the truth was out. Marsh's face turned pale. "You went to the press?" "Damn right I did," Logan shot back. "Because this isn't just about a broken firehouse. It's about a city that's been lied to. They trust us. They believe that when they call 911, we'll come." His voice cracked with fury. "And we didn't." Reed's jaw tightened. "You think you're a hero for this?" he sneered. "You think people are going to care? These things happen all the time. It's just the way the system works." Logan slammed his fists on the desk. "No, it's the way you made it work." The tension in the room was suffocating, but Logan wasn't finished. He turned to the door and yanked it open. Outside, the rest of the Firehouse staff had gathered, drawn in by the commotion. They had overheard everything. Some looked stunned, others guilty, but a few had fire in their eyes, because Logan wasn't the only one who had wanted change. "The department's investigating," Logan said, his voice carrying through the station, "and the mayor's office already saw the report. There's going to be a full audit of this firehouse. Every decision, every ignored call, it's all under review." He locked eyes with Reed. "So if you think you're going to keep your jobs after this, think again." Marsh opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the station's main doors swung open. Two men in suits walked in, badges flashing. "Internal Affairs." Reed stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "Now, let's not be hasty." One of the agents cut him off. "Captain Reed, Lieutenant Marsh, you're both under investigation for gross negligence and misconduct." Logan stepped back, watching as the weight of their corruption came crashing down. The firehouse had ignored its duty for too long, but today, accountability arrived. With Captain Reed and Lieutenant Marsh placed on immediate suspension, the firehouse stood at a crossroads. The toxic leadership that had allowed corruption and negligence to fester was gone, but the damage they left behind wouldn't be fixed overnight. Logan knew that rebuilding the station's integrity wasn't just about replacing bad leaders. It was about changing the culture. The first morning after their removal, Logan stood in front of the entire crew. Some firefighters looked relieved, others uncertain, but most were simply waiting to see what would happen next. He took a deep breath and addressed them not as their superior, but as one of them. "I know the last few weeks have been hell," Logan started, his voice steady but strong. "I know a lot of you felt like you had no choice but to go along with the way things were, but that ends today." He looked around the room, letting his words settle. "From now on, we do this the right way. No more ignoring calls, no more picking and choosing who we save, no more putting politics before people. This firehouse serves everyone, no exceptions." A murmur ran through the group. A few nodded, some still hesitated, but then a voice spoke up. "Does that mean we're actually going to start responding to calls in the outer districts?" It was Carter, a veteran firefighter who had been at the station for over 15 years. "Yes," Logan said firmly. "Every call gets answered. No more playing favorites." A slow shift began that very day. Under interim leadership, protocols were rewritten, ensuring that response times were based solely on urgency, not location or social status. Logan worked tirelessly with city officials to restructure funding, making sure the department had the resources it needed without relying on political donors. But fixing policies wasn't enough. Trust had to be rebuilt. To prove that things had changed, Logan and his team went into the community. They hosted public safety workshops, visited local schools, and even set up open forums where residents could voice their concerns. At first, people were skeptical. They had been let down too many times. Then, one evening, a fire broke out in an apartment complex on the very street where the two children had lost their lives. The call came in, and for the first time in years, the station responded immediately. Fire engines roared down the street. Logan himself was on the first truck leading the charge. They arrived within minutes, breaking through doors, pulling people from smoke-filled rooms, and rescuing a mother and her newborn trapped on the top floor. Not a single life was lost. As the fire died down, the crowd that had gathered wasn't angry this time. They weren't grieving. They were watching, hopeful, because the firehouse had finally shown up when it mattered. As Logan removed his helmet, he met the eyes of the community, and for the first time in a long time, they believed in their fire department again. A week after the firehouse's transformation began, Darren Marsh stood outside the station, unsure if he should walk in. The former lieutenant had been at the heart of the firehouse corruption, standing beside Captain Reed as they let people suffer for the sake of convenience. He had been suspended, disgraced, and nearly arrested for his role in neglecting calls. But despite everything, he was here. Logan spotted him from the station doors, arms crossed. The rest of the firefighters had noticed too, their conversations dying down as they waited to see what would happen. Darren met Logan's gaze and took a slow breath before stepping forward. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he admitted, his voice quieter than the arrogance he once carried. "But I'm here because I need to make things right." The tension in the air was thick. Carter, the veteran firefighter, scoffed, "Why should we believe you? You let people die, Darren. You ignored calls because it was easier." Darren swallowed hard. "I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life, but if there's any way I can help, any way at all, I want to." Logan studied him carefully. Redemption wasn't about words. It was about action. "You want to prove yourself?" Logan asked. "Then start from the bottom. No rank, no authority. You'll train with the new recruits. You'll work the hardest shifts. And you won't get special treatment." Darren nodded without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes." Logan glanced at his team, then back at Darren. "Then suit up." Darren had made his choice. Now he had to earn back the trust he had lost, one fire at a time. As Logan stood outside Firehouse 22, watching his team prepare for another shift, he reflected on how much had changed. The station that once symbolized corruption and indifference was now a place of honor again. The firefighters moved with renewed energy, taking pride in their work. Calls were answered without hesitation, and the community, once wary of their own fire department, was beginning to trust them again. Darren, stripped of his former title, had taken the hardest road back. He started at the bottom, proving himself not with words, but with action. He trained alongside rookies, worked the toughest shifts, and took orders from the same firefighters who once despised him. It wasn't easy, many still doubted him, but he kept pushing forward, and when the first real test came, a blazing apartment fire with families trapped inside, Darren didn't hesitate. He charged in, rescuing a young boy from the smoke-filled hallway, proving once and for all that he was here to serve, not to hide. Logan knew that leadership wasn't about titles or power. It was about standing beside your people, doing the hard work, and ensuring that no one was left behind. Firehouse 22 had lost its way because those in charge had put themselves above their duty. Now, that culture was gone, replaced with a team that understood the true meaning of service. As Logan walked back inside, the alarm blared. Another emergency call. The team moved into action, and Logan joined them, climbing into the fire engine as it roared to life. Because leadership isn't about sitting in an office. It's about being in the trenches, side by side, with your team. Firehouse 22 was no longer failing, it was alive again, and this time it would stay that way.